In the last lesson, we discussed which foods to avoid. This one, we're going to talk about which foods you should buy to store in your pantry so that whenever you are running short on time, you can create a quick meal with what you have on hand. I'm going through the foundations of what I keep in my pantry so you can start thinking like a chef. The first component to any dish that I always keep on hand is, of course, your oil of choice. Now, I told you in the last lesson that I like to use coconut oil to cook with, so I always make sure to keep some of this on hand. Next are your foods like garlic, onions. These are called aromatics, and they're important to building flavor into any of your dishes. The next category I have here are my proteins, and these are shelf-stable proteins that I like to keep on hand so that any given day I can build a complete dish. So what I like are garbanzo beans, also called chickpeas. These are a great addition to any dish. I always like to keep tuna on hand, and I buy tuna in water so that I can do a variety of things with it, from tuna melts to tuna casserole. This ends up being very versatile. Another great item to have on hand are beans, and black beans are actually a whole protein. You'll find that some foods only have partial proteins, and these are foods like peanut butter, even whole grains like bulgur have protein in it, but it's not a complete protein. But you can do food combinations to make it a whole protein. So I pair my peanuts with a whole grain, and then it becomes a whole protein. Peanuts I keep on hand to make my own peanut butter. You are certainly more than welcome to just buy store-bought peanut butter or another nut butter. The next category are my starchy foods, my whole grains, my potatoes. So one that I always keep on hand is brown rice. Now brown rice takes a full 35 to 40 minutes to cook, and therefore I will make a big batch, leave it slightly undercooked, and that way when I go to reheat it, it's not mushy, but it's just as creamy and perfectly cooked as you would when you make it on the stove the first day. However, a great substitute to brown rice is bulgur. That's B-U-L-G-U-R. And bulgur only cooks in 12 minutes, yet is a whole grain. So this is a wonderful option for you, especially when you're cooking on a time crunch. Next, I always keep on hand lots of sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are the healthier alternative to the classic white baked potato because they are so much more nutrient dense. Therefore, always keep these on hand. Next is my sauce category, and these include items such as white cooking wine, balsamic vinegar. I always keep some tomato sauce on hand in case I want to do a tomato dish and I don't have enough fresh tomatoes. And I have my sweetener, honey, and lemon juice, and these make great sauces. Another item I love keeping on hand for sauces is coconut milk. Especially because a lot of times dairy products, especially the ones in the grocery stores, are so chock full of excess hormones that our bodies just don't need. So coconut milk ends up being a great alternative for a creamy sauce. One of the items I always keep on hand that falls into the sauce category is unbleached all-purpose flour. And this I use for any time I want to thicken a sauce. But make sure your flour says unbleached on it. There are two varieties, bleached and unbleached, and just like brown rice versus white rice, you want to go for the less processed flour. The most useful item I keep on hand is chicken stock. I like to use chicken stock because I make it from scratch and I use my chicken bones, but you're more than welcome to use vegetable stock as well. Lastly, I have my cabinet full of spices and herbs. It's great to have a whole variety of different herbs and spices because then you can play around and let your imagination go wild. These pantry items are going to be your building blocks for a healthy, timely cooking. vegetables. So now I'm going to show you how I pull together a quick dish using these items and my own creativity. I have my daughter Ella here helping me. She likes to join in the process. And if you have kids, it is never too early to start getting them interested in cooking. So out of my ingredients, I look at all of them and determine which one takes the longest to cook. Your brown rice, your potatoes, they often take the longest to cook. Because I already have a big batch of bulgur that I made previously, I don't need to worry about cooking those right now. But if I didn't have that already made, then I would get that on the stove first. I have my coconut oil. I'm going to grab a spoonful of it. I use about that much. So the coconut oil is in my pot, and I have the heat on medium. And sweet potato is going to take the longest to cook, so I cut that first. To speed up cook time, I'm going to cut these into pretty thin, small pieces. Professional chefs concern themselves with cutting perfectly even slices, but for the home cook, it doesn't matter as much. Next, I'm going to take a clove of garlic. This is a clove. This is a head. Don't get the two confused. It's really easy to peel a clove of garlic if you lay it flat and smash it with the blade of your knife. The peel comes right off, and then you can easily mince your garlic and throw it in the pot. This is when my chicken stock becomes really useful. So I want to continue cooking these sweet potatoes, but I need a little bit of liquid in order to do so. And I don't want to add water because it's just going to taste so flavorless. And then you can let your dish simmer for as long as it needs to. Because I cut my sweet potatoes so thin, they are nice and tender, and I'm ready to finish my dish. So to my sweet potatoes, I then add a cup of my pre-cooked bulgur. If I had rice, I would add rice. If I had another grain, I would add another grain. I add that and stir it together, and now it becomes more like a risotto. You can look at the color, and if you want some green, you can add parsley, some chopped up kale, whatever you want. I'm going to keep this simple. I might add a few peas to it. Yeah, I think I will. As I think about what I want my dish to turn into, I'm thinking I want it to be a little bit more liquidy than it is right now. So again, I simply add my chicken stock. But now I'm thinking I want to add a different flavor to it. So I could go with some white cooking wine, I could go with fresh lemon juice, or both. And I'm a fan of throwing it all in, so I'm going to do a little bit of both. And as you can see, I'm just creating this as I go along. It's all about experimentation. I decided I'm going to zest my lemon peel rather than adding the juice, so I get the most out of my lemon. Now this dish is really starting to turn into something savory, but I want to add a boost of protein to it. So I'm just going to throw in some garbanzo beans. It's always a good idea when you're using canned beans to rinse them through a strainer so that you get rid of that excess liquidy stuff and the excess sodium. I'm going to throw a handful into my dish. I'm going to save the rest of them for feeding my daughter. So this is what our dish is looking like right now, and this is the unseasoned stage. We need to add salt because the only thing that has sodium in here right now are the garbanzo beans, and I'm going to add lots of herbs for flavor. Looking through my spice cabinet, the herbs that stuck out to me are oregano, thyme, cayenne, also known as ground red pepper. This makes it spicy. Black ground pepper, and some coarse salt. Now is the moment of truth when we stir it all together, taste our dish, and see if there's anything we want to change. Whether it needs to have more salt in it. Maybe it needs to be creamier. We can add some coconut milk if we want to. This is delicious. Pair it with a side salad and you have dinner. Your homework assignment is to buy these and create your own unique dish.